Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Sam. I'm the marketing manager at Open Reality, and I'll be your host today. I'm joined by my colleague Richard. He's our wireless pre-sales consultant, and he'll be running you through today's presentation. Just before we get started, as you probably just heard announced, you are in listen-only mode, so please use the Q&A option to ask any questions, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. You'll get a copy of the recording post session, so don't feel like you need to take copious amounts of notes. You'll be able to watch it back at your leisure. Without any further ado, I'll leave you in Richard's capable hands. Over to you, Richard.
Okay, well, good afternoon to you all. Are we sharing the screen, Sam?
Yep.
Yep, good. Just double check on that. So, right, okay, so today's or this afternoon's session is on the EnGenius Cloud or the EnGenius AI Cloud, where we visualize the network with the AI-driven solution from EnGenius. We're going to cover through a short introduction to the solution, well, the short introduction to Open Reality, which is done, then an introduction to the EnGenius Cloud solution and the AI Cloud, the family of devices that can be managed by it, so the access point, the switches, the SD-WAN gateway, the old name for which was the security gateway. Just to let you know, recently they have EnGenius have started to make available a PDU solution into the family. Currently, it's not available in the UK, so we're not talking about it on that side of it. It's available with US sockets, which have no use to us on that side of it. And then we will look at the differences between the basic and the pro comparison. The basic is the free management solution level, and then the pro is the paid for license feature on that side, followed by some questions at the end. So what is EnGenius Cloud? Well, it is a solution made out of an EnGenius enabled cloud server sitting in the cloud, which is running all of the intelligence. So that's the configuration, the monitoring of the environment, potentially also some of the analysis, the report generation, etc. from the solution. And it controls your access points, your network switches, and your security gateways on that side of it. We'll take a look at various products as we go through on these actual slides. So the whole solution is made up of the EnGenius Cloud solution, being the management layer. Now you can access that management layer from either a conventional web browser, so log in on that side of it, as well as by an app on a Android or an iOS device. Now that app on the iOS device or the Android device can make it very useful for the onboarding of the devices. We scan the barcode to add it to the environment, or we can add the devices manually via the web interface. The other advantage of that or benefit from the app is that that app can be used to alert you to a problem on your network. So instead of having an email that comes through, the app will ping up and you can see that there's a status change on that side of it. So you get that instant notification. And again, you're not in the environment as such. So it's wherever you have internet connectivity, we can manage and be aware of the environment. There are some concepts. So we have an organization. Now, an organization contains multiple networks. Certain devices can only belong to a single network. So, for example, a SD-WAN gateway is assigned to a network. All of the SD-WAN gateways in a organization can be managed effectively centrally, and things like VPNs and stuff like that are very easy to establish them between your shared or in a or single organization. The management on the VPNs is easy because everybody trusts everything inside the organization. Pre-shared keys, etc., where stuff is located is nicely simply controlled on that side of it. So when you first log into the cloud, and you can see this also in the app as well, you will see the status of your network. And if we have everything is showing as nice and green circles, we're saying, yep, my one gateway is up, my two switches are up, my access points are up, and I've currently got one client connected. If we start to see gray appearing, that gives us an indication as to, hang on, we've got an access point that's down, or one switch is down. If I've got clients that have disconnected or having problems, we will start to see that appearing. And we also have the ability for in the cloud to actually map the topology of the wireless solution. So we're seeing here, we can instantly see that if this switch goes down, for example, I'm going to lose this access point. We can see the status of the link. So this is a aggregated link. We can see that that's an aggregated link from its coloring. If one of the aggregation pairs goes down, we can see that, and we can see the current status of the environment, and we can drill into it further. There are a number of access points available. So we've got indoor access points, wall plate APs, Wi-Fi 5 APs, Wi-Fi 6 APs, and there is also a Wi-Fi 6E access point available. Additionally to I'm going to call it a standard access point, there are a couple of what we call security access points. Now those security access points, you can see because they'll have an S at the end of their name. In fact, I've just noted here, I should have put the S on this here. But basically, this is an ECW 230 with an additional third radio, which is a purely security radio. Now that security radio, although we're saying it's security features, can also be used for other capabilities. So for example, DFS 08, which we'll talk about later on, because that radio, that third radio, does not do any client association. It can scan to do the DFS pre-selection or pre-analysis for us on that side of it. There are additionally Wi-Fi 5 indoor APs, again wall plate. There are now less Wi-Fi 5 access points around because Wi-Fi 6 is coming along, but they are still valid and still around and available for you. No security features available, unfortunately, for the Wi-Fi 5 APs. And then we have Wi-Fi 5 or Wi-Fi 6 external access points. Now, all of these external APs can use external antennas. You don't have to use the omnidirectionals, which are supplied with the AP if you want to on that side of it. There are various options available for you. And then when we get to the switches, switches fall generally into three categories. You've got the non-PoE switches, then you'll have the PoE switches and a full PoE switch. The difference between the full PoE switch, so between the L2 plus 24 and the L2 plus 24 full deep PoE, is purely the amount of PoE budget available. Even on this standard PoE variant, all 24 ports or all 24 copper ports are able to provide PoE up to a combined total of 240 watts, as well as on the full PoE where we have the 410 total watts available for power. There are some other nice features about the PoE capabilities. So for example, we can say we want to do a firmware update or reboot the switch code without actually interrupting the PoE power being delivered to devices. So particularly applicable to things like video cameras, which may be recording data or have the capability of recording data locally. A power cycle of the switch or an upgrade of the switch, we don't want, of the code, obviously, we don't want to interrupt the camera operation. So we have that capability. We can also say, well, if we don't see, if we can't ping the camera, we can automatically power cycle the PoE port in question so that we can rectify the potential problem, if there is a problem with the device lost its IP connectivity. So all of the switches are layer 2 plus, not just standard layer 2. Some of them are, well, there's one desktop style size switch. There are a mixture of 13-inch 1U and 19-inch 1U, and there is one switch which is actually a half U in the width, with racking to be able to make it into a pair of them, a full 1U 19-inch width on it. Various options. Again, you can see that we have got what we call the MG Plus, so multi-gig. So we've got here an access a switch that has got 8 2.5 gig copper ports on it. We've got a standard AF-AT version, and we also have the ability for an AF-AT BT variant of the access point of the switch. Why do we need it? Some of the switches do require additional PoE power that the BT gives us available. So we've got the full options available across the environment for us. And then we have what we call the aggregation switches. Again, they're layer 2 switches, but they are giving you much higher count of multi-gig ports and higher multi-gig ports. So we've got 8 10 gig copper ports, or 8 or 12 SFP plus ports across it. The aggregate 12 is this half U width one, and there are brackets to stick 2 of them together to occupy a full single width 19-inch U for you on that side of it. Again, various options available on that side of it. So there's a complete family of switches. Now the switches can be managed locally as well. They don't have to be managed from the cloud, although we are today talking about the cloud management of them. And then we have a range of gateway appliances. So we have the ECS ESG 320, which is the small appliance with 1 SFP on it. We have a 510, which is the, I'm going to call it also the smaller appliance. 4 copper ports, but 2.5 gig copper ports, one of which is a PoE plus. So if I've only got a single access point that I need to power on that site, we've got the capability of doing it all from a single appliance on the environment. We have a 610, again, 4 copper ports, 1 PoE plus port on that included, but much higher firewall and VPN capability, throughput capabilities. And then we have the 620, which is a full 1U rack environment. These are all desktop sizing, gives us 2 SFP plus ports, 8 2.5 gig ports, 4 of which are PoE plus available on that side of it. So we've got quite a high PoE capability. Nice thing is functionality, features, configuration is the same across all of these, only the port density on the individual devices making the changes. When we look at the highlights, so I'm now going to switch and just show one slide here and then switch into the actual web interface, and we'll take it from there. So this is now, let me just check that I've not logged out. Let me log in again. So I'm logging in. I'm using my ePartner credentials to log in, but it could equally be a username and password. You can have it tied into a 2-factor authentication method. So if you have or want that requirement, yes, we can have that 2-factor authentication, and you can enable it on your account on here, so enabling your 2-factor authentication. Now, when I first log into the environment, I will get greeted by my organization. So in this case, the organization is called Megacorp, and I'm looking at the head office network. Across up here, we have the various hierarchies. Now, these are individual organizations. So if I make a configuration change in the test environment, that will have no impact on the basic org, this Richard org, the Open Reality, or the Megacorp organization. I'm looking here at the head office. I can also, because I'm have access to these organizations, I can make other configuration changes. If I'm logging in as a effectively as a super user into the environment, so I see on these, I have granularity to be able to add individual users. So this admin, this is my user here. I can invite a user, and in the Megacorp, because that's where I'm currently logged into, I can turn around and say, you're only going to be a viewer or a front desk user. Front desk user purely to the guest management portal to administer users. Viewer, no admin, well, has view only rights basically, and we can tie it to individual networks as required on that side of it. I can change my organization, whichever one we're currently highlighted in yellow is the one we're working on. If I want to work on the test environment, I just double click on it and then it will change the test environment. And as you can see here, these are the users. Now this user here, I've got full admin rights to all those three networks. I could equally have modify this so that that user only has viewer rights to the test environment, and he automatically has viewer rights therefore to the environment underneath. But I could give him admin rights purely to the test lab, but only viewer to there. So it can be a very, very granular solution on that side. So let's go back to Megacorp. So when we're looking here at the overview and we enter the dashboard, what is this saying to me? Well, this is saying that I've currently, on the Megacorp organization, I've got no clients associated overall. However, if I drill into an individual office, and my clients have, I think, just all dropped off the network. That's what clients tend to do. The back in, they've reconnected. It takes a moment or two for devices to reappear on here connected, but I can see what's going on. I can drill into here if I want to. So I can drill into my gateway, and this takes me into this gateway. What is this gateway telling me? Well, I can go into the details of the gateway, and we can see from here that it's got the WAN interface, and it's got two of them. Here is just purely looking at the information. I can't make changes to the configuration here, but I'm seeing the overview of the environment. What interface is being used, what speed they're actually at. These are, connecting at 1 gig, 2.5 gig, because it's the darker green to the environment. How it's configured, what LANs interfaces, or what LANs are configured. So what are the IP addresses, what's the current DHCP address usage, etc., what's available, and then I can look at the DHCP lease, what's actually been released on that gateway. If I want to do configuration of that device, I would come down to the configuration onto the gateway here, and now I can click the interface tab, and then this is the WAN interface tab on the environment. A network can only have a single gateway in it. So we do this effectively at the network configuration. An organization can have multiple networks, and therefore you can have a gateway on each individual network. With this gateway, we can see we've got two WAN interfaces available. I can enable WAN 2 is enabled, but is currently not plumbed up. So it's down, but it's defined ready if I want to use it as a second WAN interface. It might be that I've only got a single WAN in the interface, so I can use that WAN 2 interface as an additional LAN interface if I want to in the environment. In addition to the I'm going to call it the copper WAN interfaces. We have a USB interface which can be used for a cellular modem, so we can actually have 3 WAN interfaces on the box, and we can turn around and say this is a failover or this is a load balanced interface. We have support for host names, dynamic DNS, etc. So if you're using this for VPN termination, instead of knowing what the IP address is, which is fine until it changes, we can connect to a host name. Really used for client to site type VPN deployments. If we're doing a site to site in the same organization, then EnGenius will be aware of any dynamic address changes of the gateways on that side of it. We can come into the LAN interface and we can see that we've got various configured. Because I've decided that I want a second WAN port, I've only got 2 interfaces available for LAN. They are both effectively a single switched interface on that side of it, and I've defined a couple of additional VLANs on it. We can, if we want to, deploy additional static routes onto it. One thing I should have probably mentioned is that we can deploy the gateway appliance in 2 manners. We can either deploy it in a true rooted environment, so it's the default gateway, great for new deployments, but if I want to add it into an existing environment where there is an existing default gateway or firewall which may be doing stuff, but I want to add this WAN gateway into it, well, I can deploy it in bridging mode on the environment, and then it just drops into the network to bridge through the LAN to the WAN sides of it. In addition to the interface configuration, we can do site-to-site VPNs on here. So from a site-to-site VPN, if it's in my environment, I just slide across to the site-to-site VPN, decide if I want to do a full mesh, so where I've got every node is effectively a hub and establishes a VPN as required or continually to each other node. So in this case, if I had 3 nodes, I would have 2 VPNs from each site, full meshed solution, or I can select a hub and spoke. So if this is the central office one, and I want all of my regional offices to establish their VPN back to me and not to establish a VPN additionally from each regional office to every other regional office, we would select on the main head central office, the hub and spoke, and then on the regional offices, we would set them up as a mesh, as a hub VPN, and that will automatically flip across on that side of it. And then you'd say which are the hubs included. We have to tell it which networks we want to include on the VPN topology. So I'm only including VLAN 2 in my topology. The rest of them are all tied back. Now, I've got on here a pro feature license available for me. So we'll talk about the pro feature licensing later on. So if this device is behind a device that is doing NATing, my VPN needs to know what my true public IP address is to establish. Well, not a problem. We can enable NAT traversal, set it to automatic if we've got the pro license, and that's it, done. If I need to establish a VPN to non-EnGenius gateways or an EnGenius gateway that belongs to another organization, then unfortunately it has to be done in the more traditional manual method, and you then click the add and fill in the required information as to where it actually is, what its public WAN is, etc. on that side of it, and what networks you want to have, or what networks are behind it on that side of it. So you do the configuration on that side. And then finally, we can write some policy to say, you know, what traffic do we actually want to go out on the VPN? So we're saying this is the local network, but it might be that I want to block certain traffic passing across the VPN. So I can then write my rule here, rules, etc., based on my requirement if I don't want certain stuff to be available or certain stuff to go across the network. across the VPN. So that's how I'd set up my VPN, and then I'd click apply to save it. In addition to that, have a client VPN, very, very similar. You just do the initial configuration for where is it going to, clients are going to terminate, and then you have to configure your IPsec VPN client to terminate to the site. And then we have the option of the firewall. Now the firewall can be quite granular. So I'm writing here a policy where we're saying, well, the 73 network going to the 72 network, I'm blocking. And what that description says is that the 73 network is my guest wireless network, and I do not want my guest wireless network users to have any access to my corporate network on that side of it. So any source, any destination ports, we deny access to it. And then we have a rule underneath which allows everything to the outside world. That's the outbound rule. So that's in this case going through from one network to the other network, but it could equally be to the internet. We have the capability of port forwarding. So if we want to port forward a public IP address to an internal, we can do that and handle it. Again, it's quite nice and simple to do it. Create the rules on that side of it. We can do a one-to-one NAT as well. So static NAT into the device. We want to public on that. Again, nice and simple. We add a rule, so which link is it coming to, what public IP address linking to what, and then we can, if we want to, include additional control to say, well, if it's coming in on this remote IP address that's coming in on this onto this port, and log it on from a rule perspective. So we have that granularity if we need to. And then we finally have the allowed services, which is effectively communication to the management or to the WAN gateway. So by default, you cannot ping it, for example, from any remote IP address. You ping it internally, but you won't be able to ping the WAN. Likewise, internally, we cannot access the local web interface internally. The internal web interface of the gateway, which is used for the initial configuration where we say we want that WAN 1, WAN 2, DHCP assigned static IP address, etc. We can only access that from the inside of the gateway, or we can allow into here to say from a particular external host to have access to it. So if we need it, we can do it on that side of it. So that's all the gateway side. Nice and simple. When we get to the access points, so we have two simple bits of configuration. I'm going to start first of all with the radio configuration at this point. So the radio configuration is the default settings that get applied to the environment. So for an indoor access point, we want to use static channels, a single static channel, or do we want it to be automatically selected? We can select the ones that we actually want to use, what our target transmit power is, and what our minimum basic bit rate will be, etc. We can configure these effectively globally. We can turn around and say, I want to not use a DFS channel, or I want to include DFS channels by default. The same, and say for 6 gig. The nice thing is that we also have this option for zero weight DFS, which we'll talk about later on a slide. But basically what that allows to happen is on a security AP, that third radio is used to do a continual scan to decide what the DFS environment looks like, so that we can effectively pre-block from the selection of the APs the requirement to do a DFS scan. Can I use this channel? Because it's already done that scan, so it knows that that channel is available. So it can be a faster channel switch on that side of it. All of the APs can also be used to create a mesh between each other. So if I want to enable meshing, it's as simple as sliding this across on which band I wish to use the meshing backhaul on. And then on individual access points, if I've enabled it globally, I might not want it to partake in a mesh, and I can then deselect it from an individual AP. The same is available for external environments, for the external APs, and then you just click apply on that side of it. The other thing for the access points is the SSIDs. So I've got here two networks. I've got the Megacorp SSID. This has been configured with a pre-shared key. The nice thing is, this is straightforward. Any feature which is a pro feature, you can clearly see because it will be enabled beside where it says pro. Give it a name, decide which bands I want it on. Pre-shared key. I have a pre-shared key that's been configured. We also have the ability of using a WPA MyPSK. Now this MyPSK is effectively a unique pre-shared key per user, so that you can remove the problem with pre-shared keys that need to change every time a user leaves a smaller organization. You can achieve exactly that or very similar by using a radius server, but that means you need to configure the radius server to do your authentication. Smaller organizations like the MyPSK, or as other vendors will call it, dynamic pre-shared key, per user pre-shared keys, they're all the same solution on that side of it. Specify, we enable our features. We want R, we want W. I want W. Do I want it for all clients, or do I only want clients which can use the W, so the protection of the management frames? Which VLAN is the client going to be connected to once they've associated? Going to VLAN 2, and I'm deploying it in bridge mode. We can also do NAT mode. So NAT mode is quite commonly used where we have a guest wireless network requirement. I don't want to have my guest network having any access to my internal network as such. So we're bridging it. We don't bridge it. We hide it behind the IP address of the AP on the environment. So there's a local DHCP server on the access point side of it. Can be done, and we can also tunnel the SSID back to a GRE termination device. In the pipeline or on the roadmap, there is the potential that we will be able to say this access point is outside of my office environment. I want to terminate a VPN tunnel onto my gateway on that side of it. Again, we have the dynamic guest pool, VLAN pooling here, so we can keep our broadcast domain small while still allowing support for a large number of clients by distributing clients across different VLANs, although they are still associated to a single PSK authenticated SSID or a MySPK there. We've got application visibility enabled, so it allows us to actually see what applications are being used in the environment. And then we have a few advanced features. So layer 2 isolation, this is the corporate network. My corporate clients might have a requirement to talk to each other, so therefore it's been disabled, and I'm not going to enable any band steering, so to push clients to go to the 2.4 or the 5 gig radio if required. And I can also, if I want to, enable the broadcast management control on broadcast packets being controlled, so we only allow ARP and DHCP on the wireless environment, really to clean up the RF environment on that side of it. That's the basic configuration. We can also limit per client or per SSID the bandwidth, and we can also push them via a captive portal. Now, corporate SSID, captive portal has been turned off, but I could turn around and say, well, it's a pre-shared key to get onto the wireless network, and then you get hit by a web interface where I want to know your domain, username and password credentials, for example, so that I can authenticate these BYOD devices to the environment on that side of it. If I'm going to do that, and I might want to tie against an AD, then unfortunately it's going to be a pro license feature for it, although you could use a Radius server or the voucher server or the EnGenius authentication. So this is a user that you create purely in the EnGenius environment. We have a splash page, which is highly configurable on here. So you can edit all of this content either directly in the web interface here, or if I haven't got it enabled, but we'll see it later on, you can actually click the advanced and then edit the HTML, which is a nice graphical interface. We can schedule when the SSID wants to be on or off, and we can also have this access control. So if you've got a particular device that you do not want to connect to the network, then even if they know all the credentials, we're blocking it as a blocked device. We can also have the capability of saying, well, these are the VIP devices. So for example, if we're looking at the mega guest organization on the access control here, I might want to enable it, and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to add here devices because that don't have the, so let me enable it, doesn't have the a web interface as such, so from TV or something like that, they're not going to have the ability to fire up a web interface to accept something. So we know it's Mac. We're therefore not going to prompt it for authentication. It still connects to the guest network, but we're not prompting it for authentication on that side of it. If we look at the splash page here, so I've got the splash page enabled. And I'm here saying I want to use the voucher service. So the voucher service, if I go to that URL, and I need to sign in to that URL, allows me as a receptionist in this case to say, well, I want to add a user, I want a 1 hour voucher, or I want a 5 hour voucher for unlimited number of users. These are the policies that I've created, and I want to generate a single guest pass. So I click the generate a guest pass here, and we now have a username and password for that user, and I click print or export it to a CSV. I can also create them in advance for the users on that side of it. We can see then also which accounts are still valid and if there's a note on the side. So it gives that front desk that capability of adding additional control in that side. And these are the plans that we've got configured for it. If we look at the splash page, this splash page, I want to do some configuration. So I've just typed in welcome to Megacorp on here. I've put my own terms and conditions in color. I only do what's it. I can change these logos. If my editing skills or capabilities going, well, I want it to look slightly different, no problem. We now have access to the full HTML, and you can knock yourself out creating the HTML as you would like it to appear on that side of it. But it's designed to be a simple solution. It is of course possible to use an external splash page, so hosted somewhere else if you so desire on that side of it. So if we look here, I'm still got a pre-shared key, so I hit the pre-shared key, and if my user experience would then be I've associated, and I then get directed to a web page where I have to put in my username and password that the receptionist has given me to gain access into the environment. I'm now going to click onto the manage. So far we've been looking at the configuration of the access point and the SSIDs. Haven't looked at the switches yet, but I'm now going to select on the manage and select the access points here. So I've now got 2 access points. If I want to actually look at the details of one of these APs, I can click on the details here, and this is where the details allows me to turn around and say, this, I want this particular SSID being broadcast. I can override it here. So I can say, no, I don't want that Megacorp SSID being broadcast on this particular access point because it makes no sense to me. I can also override on the per AP as I require to say, well, on 2.4, I don't want it to be a channel auto select. I want that to be on a static channel 11, for example. I want to change its data rates, etc. On that side of it. And if I had meshing and I didn't want this to use meshing, then I would have the option of turning meshing feature off on this individual access point. So it gives me the full granularity of it. I can see the IP address. It's static, DHCP assigned. If I want to give it a static IP address, specify static, put it in, click apply. They then get applied to the environment on it. I can also add photographs to it. So during the deployment of the AP, one of the features that you can, or information you can add with the web, the application is a take a photo directly, attach it to it, and then the photo appears in here. So if you're doing your deployment, it's then no question which access point we're looking at. We've actually got a photograph of it being deployed so people can see where it actually is in the environment on that side of it. We can see that it's prompting me. We can see what we've actually got on the environment. So from a log perspective, what's happening on, and then also what clients are actually associated. And this particular AP, I don't think I've got any clients associated to it, but if I did, we would then see them in here. We'll look at the live clients. So this is real time, and we have the option of actually exporting these clients associated on the actual access point. Now we have this little diag tool here. So when I click this little diag tool, I'm now connecting back to the access point, and I'm now pulling this data in real time. So I'm now seeing that its CPU usage, its memory usage, its current throughput, its channel utilization. So it's on channel 104, and I'm seeing 1% of 5 gig airtime usage, and I can drill down to what the 2.4 looks like. I can see what the 2.4, if it was a 6 gig capable AP, then I'd have the 6 gig features in there as well. I can also from here, well, if people are complaining, well, I can see in real time that that AP has a response to Google, Facebook, Twitter, and the BBC of about 16, 17 milliseconds. So that's not bad, and it's pretty constant across it. I can add different destinations. I can also run a speed test. So remotely from here, what's it looking like? So on the wired interface, yep, I'm seeing a steady 70 megabits per second. Hopefully this isn't going to disturb too much of the data as we go through. On the environment on that side of it. So we're saying through, so this is what it's actually doing. So I'm looking here and I'm saying that is a nice connection through to the environment. We can then do a trace route back through the environment as well. So is something working? Let's establish what the actual access point itself is going through to the environment. And then we can turn around here and we can say, right, based on this, what's the environment look like? Now, normally, if we didn't have a security rate AP here, when I click scan, it's going to say you're going to kick clients off of it. Well, I've got a security radio, so I don't have to care about that. I still get the warning on it, and it now does a scan on this case, the 2.4, to see what the environment looks like, and the same is available on the 5. Now I can leave that running in the background and go through. We have the capability with a with the Pro license to do a packet capture if we want to on the environment as well, actually on the access point on that side of it. Because I have the Pro license, we can, so we're seeing here, the channels available on the 2.4 and also on the 5, which ones are available. I'm telling you it's not available on that side of it. So that's the 40 meg on the 5, and then if we scan it on here, we can see the 5 meg channels of 5 gig channels available on that side of it. I can look at the spectrum, so I can do a spectrum analysis, and I can also go onto here and get the live clients. So if I've actually got clients on the environment, we can identify them and see what they're actually doing on that side of it. One of the things that a lot of organized people sort of lose track of is, how is my network physically put together? Well, if I come into the topology tab here and select the topology, we can see how the network is connected, and we can drill down into it, and we can see what the problems are. Now, I can see, therefore, when I hover over this APECW 115, that it's an access point and it's connected to port 3 on this switch. I can see which port this is connected to. So this is connected to port 2 on this switch. These switches are connected together, and as I hover over, you can see the 2 ports that have been aggregated together, what their current data speed is, what the upload and the download and the usage across the environment. Now, that's showing me my EnGenius environment. If I have a Pro license, I can now select the Pro, and then any non-EnGenius devices that have LLDP enabled will also appear in the environment. So in this case, we're saying, well, we can see that the gateway is now plugged into another router or a switch, and the device is of this, and we're pulling the information through. It allows you to have that visibility as to what's plugged in where. Now, if I want to go into an individual switch from here, I can then click onto the details, and that's the same as selecting the switch down here, and it brings me nicely into the switch. So the configuration of this switch, we can see the current status of the ports. Delivering PoE, this is the uplink port. This port 8, we can see from the topology, which we could link here, goes into the gateway appliance. Its total PoE usage, the PoE budget required, the photograph of the switch been applied so we can see exactly where we are referring to it on the side of it. The default system configuration, so this is what's defined globally, but we can override it per switch if we so desire. Spanning trees enabled by default LLDP. We can also do an automatic voice VLAN on that side of it. We can apply quads if we want to, IGMPN snooping, etc. And we also have the ability to lock or unlock the the local GUI access to the environment. So I could log on to the switch locally. Where the port configuration, so which ports, which VLANs they're into, which VLANs are on the environment. If I add a VLAN here, it actually gets added to the environment, so it's available on all of the switches, for example. We can mirror, we can also do scheduling of PoE on switches, on particular ports. So I want to turn off all of my external access points at night time, for example, or I want to be really green and go, the building is unoccupied, let's turn my APs off. I can do that. Link aggregation, obviously, and then the logs on that side. And then when we go to the Diag tools, because I've got the Pro license, I have various features available. You can see which ones. So again, I can see port statuses. I can run cable tests from here. The same with trace routes, they're all available. See what the ARP table, and then what is my client list, so which is the Pro features, which ports are connected to which VLAN, what clients I'm seeing where in the environment, all to help me likewise with the packet capture side of it. So I can use these combined to do a lot of testing for me in my environment. On that side, I'll pick up an individual interface if I want to, pull that stats in real time, from the environment. Seen that. We have the ability, so for floor plans and maps, so my head organization, my mega organization here, I have a building, I can see where the building is. Here's my corporate headquarters, I can drill in and I've got my floor plans, I can have my access points on there. Now, if I've got the Pro license, I have the ability then to do RF designing, so I can put simulated access points in, but I can also deploy my physical APs and drop them into the environment as to where they actually sit on the floor plans on that side of it. So I've got all that built in for me. We then also have this AirGuard. Now, AirGuard is the IPS deep intrusion detection solution, and we enable that, and we have to have A, Pro license for it, and B, we have to have security APs. We have the ability to contain. So this is, once I've detected that a device is a rogue AP, we will now send disassociation packets to any client that attempts to associate to it, i.e. if it's a replicant of one of my SSIDs, so an evil twin, etc. I don't want that in my environment. I don't want my clients connecting to it. So use with care on that side of it. Enabling that will actually turn off the ability for the DFS scanning on it, because the radio now has to be dedicated for support on that side of it. So it's enabled on here, so we can then see that there are no rogue SSIDs. What other SSIDs? Well, we can see all of the other networks that the environment can see. Now, the reason we're seeing Mega Guest and Mega Corp is because at some point, well, 6 hours ago, they were configured slightly differently. It's last seen, so it's gone away. This is the current environment seen 9 minutes ago side of it, and they get categorized based on their requirements on that side of it. That's, I think, basically all of those slides that I want to talk about. And then these, so we, as I said, we have that ability to access multiple organizations if I want to, but we also have the ability to add the hierarchical control and also add access user for admins to particular areas as required. You can see all of the network. We hover over it. We can also go into an individual AP, expand that, and we can see the real-time information being displayed, the same for a switch. So this is available for us on that side of it. So we can see the product detail. In that case, an individual switch, the same is available for the actual access points. So if I quickly switch, I shall coming onto here. So we select the access points at this point here, and if I select the detail, it takes me into that individual AP. However, if I click on the AP name, we're now pulling up like a summary on here, and again, you can see we can change the environment on that side of it. So there's a little bit of configuration available. All of the features, so fast roaming, band steering, etc. Spoken about all of these. Guest portals available. Now, some of these are pro, so the My PSK is a pro feature. We can understand what applications are being used on the network. Why is this useful? Because it allows us to understand what might be using our airtime or our internet connectivity up on that side of it. So this is the security AP. So with the DFS scanning, so advanced, so that third dedicated radio is scanning the environment and basically saying, these channels are available. I'm not detecting DFS on those, so therefore if I need to use one of those on that AP, I can quickly go DFS channel 3 is available. I can't use 5 because I'm 7 because I'm detecting DFS events on there. Makes it a smoother channel change as required. It's what they call their 0-weight DFS. It's part of the AirGuard features, i.e. you need to that third radio. It also gives us the ability to see which Bluetooth clients are. So that third radio, we can collect Bluetooth information about clients in the environment. Call only on the S models APs, and we've spoken about the AirGuard on here. The features of the WAN, as we said, agile, dual load balancing, it's secure, and it's visibility, so we can see the individual usage, what's going on. So easy site-to-site VPN, they're both available in the same organization, communicates via the cloud, so it knows which is the external IP addresses, which configures, which just establishes the VPN automatically for us with very simple clicks. NAT traversal, so behind that NATing device, we're showing here as another EnGenius device, but any brand of firewall that is NATing, we are detecting what its true is. Because we can communicate the two devices, we can say, right, this is what your IP address is, switch across, connected to this, port forward it automatically through the environment on that side of it. Self-healing, so if your dynamic IP address changes, the EnGenius device tells the cloud, my IP address has changed. Right, so this is what your configuration is. Right, hello cloud, this is another IP address change on that. It's fine, not a problem. Right, now I've got all the information I need to do to establish that, or to tell the two gateway devices how to establish your VPN, i.e. what to on that side of it. We've mentioned about the Pro and the Basic. So the Basic plan, designed for the small office, small environment, fast-growing retail, hospitality, where you want to, your management requirements are simple. It's a free license. There's no license requirements at all. And then we have the professional plan. Professional plan gives us some of the more advanced networking features available. However, it requires a pro license per device of that type that you want to enable. So I can, for example, in an organization say, I need the Pro AP features, but I don't need the Pro switch features. So I buy a Pro license for all of my APs. And I don't need to worry about the Pro licenses for my switches in the environment, or vice versa. All devices come with a complimentary Pro license for the first year. So when you buy your device, you automatically get a capability to use the Pro features for the first year. If you wish to use them from year 2 onwards, then you will have to apply the licensing for it. If you have enabled Pro features and you don't have a license, those APs will not be able to get the configuration changes. So if you've enabled the license using the the first year license, and then at the end of the first year you don't refresh, your APs will continue to work. However, you will not be able to make any changes to those APs until either you move them into an environment which doesn't have the Pro license, or you buy the Pro licenses. If you have any Pro license applied to it, you will automatically get an improvement in the Pro plan. So if you have one AP license, for example, because you've only got one AP, you will get all of the platform-wide AP Pro and switch, well, platform-wide ones on that side of it. So you'll get more reports, etc., more users available, more cloud or voucher service users, etc., available in the environment. For an AP, certain things that you lose if you don't have the Pro license. Your live diagnostic tools are limited. You lose the capability to do things like packet captures, etc. On that side of it, you can't do the spectrum analysis. You need the Pro license for that side of it. Additionally, you still get your 0-weight DFS if you've got your security APs and your BLE clients, but you lose some of the other functionality, features, etc. on that side, a reduction on it. The same with switches, etc. on the side. SD-WAN gateways, well, you lose the auto VPN. If it's all in your environment, that could be quite painful because you've now got, if you're behind NATing devices, that means you now need to manually make changes in the environment on that side of it, outside the box. But most of the features there, what you do lose, of course, is the backup and restores, or the ability to clone one network to another location. So if I have a standard deployment, I can very quickly roll out a very large, quick solution. So do we have any questions?
Yeah, we've almost, well, we are over time. So one quick question. Can you configure DTIM values?
No, you cannot configure DTIM values, unfortunately.
Okay. Yep. So it is 2 minutes past 4. So apologies for the slight overrun, but Richard, thank you very much for that thorough presentation on the EnGenius Cloud stuff. If you do have any more questions, then obviously please do reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to answer them.
There is one question that's just popped in. Yes, you can. The external APs can use external antennas. You will use, so you can use any of the Celtec antennas that are electrically compatible, and then switch those in. You will have to make the manual power adjustments for the additional gain of the antenna, but there's no default directional patch antennas available from EnGenius for those APs currently.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll send a copy of this recording to everybody probably later this week. And yeah, please reach out to your account manager if you've got any further questions. If you'd like to do a proof of concept of any of the EnGenius kit, whether that's an access point or a switch, we do proof of concepts. So again, reach out to us for more information about that. And yeah, look forward to seeing you on our next session, which is on, I think it's in August, the 15th of August. And Richard's going to be talking about how MSPs specifically can use it to manage their customer network. So we're going to be looking at some of the features that EnGenius Cloud Pro offers for MSPs. So hopefully see you then. You will get an invitation, of course, nearer the time. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I wish you all a good afternoon, and yeah, thanks again.
Okay, thanks all. Cheers.
Bye.